The man who tried to stop World War II and was ignored. Imagine this. It's 1939. The world is teetering on the edge of a catastrophe it can't yet comprehend. Nazi Germany is arming at a terrifying pace, alliances are fracturing, and fear is spreading like wildfire through Europe. Now imagine that one man, just one man, had secret intelligence that Hitler was about to invade Poland. He risked everything, his career, his reputation, even his life, to sound the alarm and prevent a second world war. But the world didn't listen. They laughed. They ignored him. They brushed him off as a crank. That man's name? Jan Karski. You've probably never heard of him. History rarely celebrates those who fail to change its course, even when they tried. But what if we told you that Jan Karski might have been the man who could have stopped the deadliest war in human history? This is the story of warnings unheeded, of heroism drowned in indifference, and of a world that sleepwalked into devastation, even when someone tried to wake it up. Stay with us as we uncover the forgotten tale of the man who tried to stop World War II and was ignored. 1. The world on the edge. To understand the urgency of Jan Karski's warnings, we have to rewind to the 1930s. Europe was in turmoil. The Treaty of Versailles had left Germany humiliated and economically crippled. Adolf Hitler exploited that bitterness, rising to power in 1933 and quickly transforming Germany into a fascist state. He promised to restore German pride, to rearm the nation, and to reclaim territories lost after World War I. Many in Britain and France watched nervously, but still believed Hitler could be appeased. By 1938, Hitler had already taken Austria in the Anschluss and bullied Britain and France into surrendering the Sudetenland through the infamous Munich Agreement. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned to London proclaiming, "Peace for our time." But some weren't buying it. Inside Poland, the tension was palpable. The Polish government, sitting uneasily between two powerful neighbors, Nazi Germany to the west and the Soviet Union to the east, knew that war was not just likely, but inevitable. Among those watching the storm was a young Polish diplomat and army officer named Jan Karski. He wasn't a general. He wasn't a world leader. But he had eyes, ears, and a conscience, and he was about to embark on a mission that could have changed the course of history. 2. Who was Jan Karski? Jan Karski was born as Jan Kozielewski in 1914, in the city of Lodz, Poland. A brilliant student, he studied law and diplomacy, and later served in the Polish army. When Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, the war officially began. But it was months before the full machinery of global conflict was engaged. Karski was captured by the Soviets early in the war, but escaped and joined the Polish resistance, known as the Home Army. He took on the code name Untold and became one of the most effective underground couriers in Europe. Risking death with every move, Karski traveled across occupied Europe carrying sensitive information for the Polish government in exile. He saw firsthand the brutality of the Nazis, the executions, the ghettos, the racial laws. But what he saw in 1942 would haunt him for the rest of his life, and send him on a desperate mission to warn the world. 3. The ghetto and the death camps. In 1942, the Polish underground decided that someone had to report to the Allies what was happening inside occupied Poland. Not just about the war, but about the Nazi extermination of Jews. That someone was Jan Karski. Karski was smuggled into the Warsaw Ghetto, where he witnessed the horrifying conditions: starvation, disease, corpses lying in the streets. He saw children begging for food and families packed into crumbling buildings without water or heat. But even more terrifying, he infiltrated the Izbica transit camp, a staging ground for Jews being sent to the death camps of Belzec and Sobibor. Disguised as a Ukrainian guard, Karski saw people being loaded into cattle cars, whipped, beaten, and herded toward gas chambers. What he witnessed was beyond imagination, and it lit a fire in his soul. He had to tell someone who could act. So he memorized every detail, every number, every name he could. And in 1943, using a false identity and a dangerous network of contacts, Karski escaped Poland and made his way to London. His mission: to tell the world what was happening, and to stop it before it was too late. 4. Warnings fall on deaf ears. In London, Karski met with British officials, including Foreign Secretary Anthony Eden. He gave detailed accounts of the Holocaust and the broader Nazi plans for Europe. But Eden, like many in the British government, was skeptical. The numbers seemed exaggerated. The horrors sounded like wartime propaganda. And most of all, they didn't want to be forced into military action based on what seemed like second-hand reports. Disappointed but undeterred, Karski traveled to the United States. There, he met with Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter, who was Jewish. Karski described in vivid detail the Nazi genocide. Frankfurter listened silently, then said, "I do not believe you." Karski was stunned. He asked if he had said anything unclear or unbelievable. Frankfurter clarified, "I did not say that you are lying. I said that I cannot believe you." Karski had run into the same wall he would face again and again. Not disbelief in him, but disbelief in reality itself. It was too horrible, too massive, too unprecedented. The idea that a nation could systematically exterminate millions of people was beyond comprehension in 1943. Even when Karski met President Franklin D. Roosevelt, he could only get so far. FDR listened, took notes, asked questions, but offered no specific plan of action. He didn't commit to bombing railways, pressuring allies, or changing strategy. His advisors thanked Karski and moved on. The world had other priorities. The Allies were focused on winning the war, then they'd worry about war crimes. Karski was dismissed. His mission had failed. 5. The price of ignorance. By the time the Allies fully liberated the death camps in 1945, 6 million Jews had been murdered. Entire families, communities, and cultures had been erased. And World War II had consumed over 70 million lives worldwide. Could it have been stopped? That's the haunting question at the heart of Jan Karski's story. If Britain, France, or the United States had taken his warnings seriously in 1939, or in 1943, could they have accelerated the end of the war? Could they have disrupted the Holocaust? Could millions have been saved? We'll never know for certain. But what we do know is this: Karski tried. He gave everything he had to speak truth to power, to force the world to see what it didn't want to see. And he was ignored. 6. A life in the shadows. After the war, Jan Karski never returned to Poland, which had fallen under Soviet control. He became a professor at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., where he taught for more than 40 years. Among his students was a young man named Bill Clinton. For decades, Karski stayed silent about his wartime efforts. The pain of failure weighed heavily on him. It wasn't until the 1970s and 1980s that historians and journalists rediscovered his story. He gave interviews, published memoirs, and spoke to Holocaust educators and survivors. In 1982, Yad Vashem recognized Karski as righteous among the nations for his heroic efforts. In 2012, President Barack Obama posthumously awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But during his lifetime, Karski never saw himself as a hero. He saw himself as a failure, because the world didn't listen. 7. Lessons for today. Jan Karski's story is not just a historical curiosity. It's a mirror held up to us today. It asks a chilling question: what warnings are we ignoring right now? History has a cruel rhythm. Warnings are given. Whistleblowers are mocked. Early signs of catastrophe are brushed aside. And when disaster finally hits, we look back in disbelief. In our world, where genocides still occur, where authoritarianism is rising, where disinformation spreads like wildfire, Karski's story reminds us that knowing the truth is not enough. You have to act. It's not enough to witness horror. Someone has to scream loud enough to shake the world. Jan Karski tried. He screamed. But the world had its fingers in its ears. If you've made it this far, take a moment to reflect, not just on history, but on our responsibility to it. History doesn't always reward heroes, but it remembers them when we choose to. If Jan Karski's story moved you, don't let it be forgotten. Share this video. Leave a comment. Tell someone about the man who tried to stop World War II and was ignored. Because maybe, just maybe, the next Karski won't be. And maybe this time, we'll listen.